World hunger is the worst in history. Currently, world hunger meets numbers never seen before. The new FAO reports, the Food and Agriculture Organization of the United Nations, point out that approximately 811 million people suffer from hunger. In addition, 2.3 billion people do not have access to adequate food levels. Data from the Global Network Against Crisis point out that 193 million people in 53 countries face acute food insecurity. In other words, they don't have consistent and sufficient access to adequate food for all people in a family to have an active and healthy life. But what factors are leading to this humanitarian catastrophe in countries and in the world? Let's find out in this video. But before that, make sure to subscribe to this new channel to see more videos that will cover, analyze, and reveal economic aspects behind countries' successes and failures, and other interesting economic facts from around the world. Despite producing enough food to feed the entire global population, the planet is currently experiencing one of the biggest food crises in history. The total number of people facing hunger in the world is 22% above the record recorded the previous year. Alliance comprising NGOs, the United Nations, and the European Union warned that the recent war in Ukraine has worsened a scenario that was already worsening at an alarming rate well before the conflict with Russia. Reality requires more urgent actions to prevent hunger and death on all continents, especially in Africa, which is experiencing serious humanitarian crisis. The world today is heading in the wrong direction, with a sharp rise in hunger in several countries. And what is causing this spike in hunger? The answer involves a combination of several factors, with the top 5 being conflicts and wars, climate changes, economic shocks, pandemic, and waste. These factors combined have turned into a perfect storm and are inflating the problem around the world. Currently, food prices have matched and even exceed the values recorded in the year 2008, 2011, and 2014, periods in which the world faced food price shocks and food crisis. To give you an idea, according to the Global Food Price Index, an index that compiles the prices of various foods such as cereals, meats, fruits, and other foods, the world is in the worst situation in recent decades. Currently, the index is at the highest level since 1992. That is, the price of food has never been so expensive. In the first quarter of 2022 alone, food inflation in developing nations rose 10% year on year. These countries located mainly in Latin America, Central Asia, the Middle East, and North Africa are the most affected by the price hike. Even countries that are known for producing food, such as Brazil, are extremely affected. Let's then understand the factors that are behind this global problem. The first factor that explains the rise in hunger in the world are conflicts and wars. The UN Chief Antonio Guterres, in a recent speech, highlighted that around 60% of world's malnourished people live in areas affected by conflict, but that all countries can be affected. The main example is undoubtedly the Russian invasion of Ukraine, which meant a huge shock in the dynamics of world food imports and exports. The countries directly involved in the war are not only major exporters of grain, but also important in supplying fertilizers to food-producing nations. As a result, the war has threatened food security around the world and affected food prices. To give you an idea, Ukraine and Russia together produce 30% of the world's wheat supply. Wheat is one of the most consumed cereals in the world, along with corn and rice, and its culture has great economic food and importance, as it is part of the diet of practically the entire world population and also makes up animal feed and agriculture. The second factor that explains the rise in hunger in the world is the negative consequences of climate change in world agricultural production. In Africa, for example, one of the continents most affected by hunger, Northeast Africa, better known as the Horn of Africa, is suffering its worst drought in 4 decades. In the Mozambican case, tropical storms, torrential rains, and floods are among the extreme events that have damaged the agricultural and food situation. The nation of Cape Verde, in turn, registered the 5th consecutive year without significant agricultural production, as happened in several Sahel nations, a strip of 5,400 kilometers in length between the Sahara Desert and the Sudan Savannah. All these cases are typical examples of negative climate consequences that increase the problems of an already serious situation. The third factor that explains the rise in hunger in the world are economic shocks and crises. According to the Actions Against Hunger organization, about 70% of the global food supply is produced by small farmers, herders, and fishermen. This means that most of the world's food production depends on small producers and small economic organizations. These producers unfortunately do not have an economic structure to face any type of financial difficulty and often end up producing less than they can, or even not producing at all. The economic crises that impact the prices of inputs, the wages of workers, and the production of the commercialization of food, together with the lack of government programs and subsidies, end up harming the production of small producers and consequently the world production. The fourth factor that explains the rise in hunger in the world is the pandemic. The pandemic generated shocks throughout the global economy that ended up being reflected in the food issue. Food supply and production chains were seriously affected. If you give an idea, one of the main factors was the energy crisis. Rising oil, natural gas, and fuel prices, together with restrictions and problems in maritime transport, have wreaked havoc on global logistics. As a result, the circulation of world food production was seriously affected. Sea voyages prices through the dispatch of containers has increased as never seen before in history. If before the pandemic, shipping a container cost was $1,000, after its price reached $4,000 and is now over $10,000. As a result, the cost of importing and exporting food were significantly affected, thus making the final price of food more expensive. And before we explain the fifth and final factor, don't forget to like the video so we can bring you more relevant content. Also, if you're interested, check out the link below to see how to start your online business as I did. The fifth and final factor to the problem of hunger in the world is the well-known problem of waste. According to the latest data from the Food Waste Index, about 17% of the world's total food production is wasted, going to trash. This clearly shows how countries do not know how to use and reuse all the resources and food that are produced. But after all, what can be done to reverse this whole situation then? Undoubtedly, the first and most important step at the moment is to end the war in Ukraine. Countries must seek political solutions to end not only this conflict, but many others that exist and prevent new ones in order to build a sustainable peace. In addition, there needs to be a global coordination and leadership to mitigate the interconnected risks of food insecurity with the other factors mentioned. In other words, there needs to be a global cooperation to face the problems of climate change, energy, and economic shocks and waste. Any meaningful solution to global hunger requires the reintegration of food production and world cooperation. As an example of solution, to achieve this definitive change of course, we can mention the commitments and opportunities offered by the 2030 Agenda, a United Nations Global Action Plan that in its objective aim to end hunger, achieve food security, and promote sustainable agriculture. These are then the first steps to prevent the increase of this global problem and reverse this humanitarian catastrophe. Well, now that you know more about the food crisis and hunger in the world, help this channel by telling us what other country or economic issues would you like us to analyze. Leave your answers in the comments below. And don't forget to like and subscribe to our new channel for new videos, where we will cover, analyze, and reveal economic aspects behind countries' successes and failures, and other interesting economic facts from around the world. Oh, and don't forget to activate the bell to stay on top of the news on this channel, and we'll see you in the next one. Until next time.